thanks to our sponsors. So thanks to SoftEd for providing the Zoom link, and thanks to the Agile Alliance for sponsoring the meetup. Keeps the meetup running along. So please check out softed.com and agilealliance.org and thank them for sponsoring. So we might, without further ado, might hand this over to Dallas. Dallas is just one of the most awesome people I know. All sorts of awesomeness. Don't shake your head. Right? Just take it. Right? Say thank you and move on.
Thank you.
Agile coach, just an agile extraordinaire. He's coming to us from New Zealand this evening, from your Wellington, Auckland. I can't remember.
Auckland.
Yeah, Auckland. So thank you for that. This is later in the evening. That's where Shane's also coming from as well. Even you know the date of last Brisbane better than I do. There you go, Shane. Thank you for that. 29th of September. Anyway, so Dale's coming to us from Auckland, and yeah, she's you'll be able to tell from her accent if that's not her original place of origin. And so what she's going to be talking to us about today is part of her life where she was at Whole Foods, who for the rest of us in the audience think think Coles or Woolworths or those types of supermarkets. It's one of the largest, it still is, I guess, one of the largest supermarket chains in the US. With its own entity, you probably aware got bought by Amazon a few years ago. So Dallas is going to share with us the journey, because Whole Foods was, I guess, why it came to the attention of Amazon to a certain extent was that it was a leader in a lot of innovative things, and I guess that's what we're going to hear a little bit about tonight. So thank you for joining us tonight, Dallas, and all over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Let me go ahead and share. Yeah, so this is where Whole Foods is really where I think I grew up, professionally. I really started as kind of a junior developer on a financial systems team. But this is really where I learned about agility and learned to embody it. And so I'm going to share with you kind of the journey over the almost decade I was there, from being really not an Agile shop at all, and to really running the biggest merger or the biggest acquisition Amazon has ever done in an Agile format with Post-it notes and painter's tape basically on 2 walls. So I was playing with titles, and it was kind of Agile changed how we buy groceries, but quite often it's really about fish tanks, Game of Thrones, and asking for forgiveness. So the reason I like that is because it's actually cutting to the quick. And that's what one of the things that Whole Foods did really well is they didn't call things, there were no rose-colored glasses. We called it like we saw it, and that was one of the superpowers. So a little bit about me. This is me bungee jumping, but this was kind of the way that I jumped into agility too. I was a developer, and I had asked my team about 7 times if we could try this Agile thing I read about. And they said no. And then I asked about 12 more times, and I think they said yes, because anything to shut me up was really what needed to happen. But after that, I started to really just kind of jump off all of these bridges when it comes to Whole Foods, particularly. We had a team where we put together a project pre-Agile, and then we scoped it for about 9 months. We cobbled our own little homegrown Agile team together, and we actually delivered that in about 6 weeks. We didn't deliver the whole thing. We were really relentless on how we prioritized, but we delivered the business value in 6 weeks. And the funny thing is, my team kind of looked around and we were like, well, that was a fluke and that'll never happen again. But the interesting thing is, it did happen again, and it happened again. And what happened here was that we kept on just gaining one team here, one team there, until management and leadership really started to see what was happening, see this difference. And so leadership said, well, we should probably have whatever this Scrum owner person is. It's like Scrum Master. So I wrote the job description for this, and then wrote the job description for the team coach and enterprise coach and executive enterprise coach. And actually got each one of those. So it's an interesting journey where, like, even in the organizational structure, we just saw a need. We wrote a job description. What was the purpose? What was the breakdown? And it went before the E-team or whoever needed to vote on it, and it got voted. So even in our Agile journey at Whole Foods, the way we hired people was becoming so much more Agile. So what I wanted to share with you guys, because it's very dear to my heart, I wanted to share with you kind of the top 3 things that I saw there that really gave Whole Foods a boon in the industry and a boon in their Agile transformation. And being a bit removed, I haven't been with Whole Foods or Amazon for about 5 years. I am coaching at different organizations, and it makes me really value what Whole Foods did well in these 3 areas. So the first one is, like, just to set the stage, consumer social responsibility. Whole Foods was doing it before it was cool. So Whole Foods was the first grocery store in the United States to ban plastic bags. Their fair wage, they didn't ever get a questionable source from for their produce or with their meat. So it was CSR kind of before it was cool. And so there was always a really lovely purpose behind it. And so it was a really cool story, very innovative in the grocery area, but not really in technology. So the first thing that I want to go over is we ask for permission or forgiveness more than we ask for permission. This here is actually a bar in the middle of a Whole Food store in Santa Monica. And the interesting thing about this is we had been doing Agile in technology. We had been doing Agile in finance. We started doing it with HR. And I kept asking to get into the business area and the development, the real estate. And finally, I was able to join this project and see how much we could actually do a physical building in an Agile format. Now, we were in the room and we were talking about psychological safety, and we were talking about really coming together as a cross-functional team. And so one of the buyers was in the room when we were talking about this new store. And this store is pretty significant because this was the first time we were able to get in there. This was going to be the first carbon neutral store. And it was a really big entry into this market. So we have a cross-functional team in the room, and one of the buyers stands up, and he says, "Now just hear me out. What if we put a bar in the grocery store?" And I'm sitting here kind of freaking out, wondering if I need to like prep my resume, because I'm like, no, there's no way a bar is going to go in a grocery store. And I'm sitting there and we're like, okay, experimentation, this is a really good chance. How can we do this? How can we learn from it? And so there was a lot of convincing, but that team really stood behind the idea of, all right, there's nothing telling us this is egregiously wrong, so let's experiment. So we build it into the store in a very modular fashion, because we were ready to rip that out and put a sushi bar in. There were half of us that had no faith in this, but we had faith in the process. Now, John Mackey, the CEO, was actually at that ribbon cutting, and I remember him leaning over and he was clapping. He was like, "I'm glad you didn't ask me to build that bar, because I would have said no." But the interesting thing was he was totally okay that it was there. He was absolutely okay, because he was like, a group of people probably know more than I do, decided that it would be okay. Now, fast forward, I didn't get fired, which was awesome. And the interesting thing is that bar actually sold more beer than the revenue of seafood in a beach area. So now you go to American, you go to a Whole Foods, there's more than likely a bar there. And it really started with having the decisions at the point of where the information was, and not necessarily asking permission for any thing that, and any and everything. We asked for forgiveness at this point, and it worked for us. Now, let's be really honest. We also started a more affordable kind of side brand that kind of blew up in our face. But the beautiful thing about that is we started it with one store to see how it would do, and it wasn't really successful. So we closed it. It turned into a regular Whole Foods market, and we learned something, that that wasn't the market that we needed to do. But man, that experiment taught us a lot about the financials of that market as well. So even in the failure of doing a side brand, we learned so much about the market that we wanted to break into, that now Whole Foods was able to offer different brands and different price points in their stores instead of doing a completely different store. Here's something else that I really loved how Whole Foods kind of took this approach. It's easy to fool one person. It's harder to fool a team. The team picked the people that were going to join. It took a 2/3 majority of the team. You had to be voted on. It was a bit like Survivor, absolutely. But the thing is the team voted. So you would have a 90-day kind of grace period. You agreed to go on, and you had to be voted permanently on the team. And if you weren't, you were found another place in the organization, or you parted ways with Whole Foods. So when Whole Foods gave the impacted people the decisions and the ability to make the decisions, retention went up. We were getting people that actually fit what was necessary. And it was the people working with those potential team members coming on that were picking their teammates. This is the environment. So managers could have easily come in and said, no, I'm going to pick this. But managers just created and stewarded this environment to say, you know how your team works better than I do. So why would I just be one person when there's 8 or 9 of you that will be working with them every day, and you can see through the BS much easier than I can. So give the decision power to the teams as well for creating what the teams look like. So when we were able to do this, we were able to also switch roles really easily, in the sense that if we had a big project over here for sales or for financial audit, we could actually bring people over and say, like, we need this help. Can you come over? And there was this self-organization and coalescing around the big priority that couldn't have happened if the people hadn't have hired who they needed to fit in those teams, and to be able to fit those gaps that, quite honestly, sometimes we don't even know we see. So it was asking the right questions. How do you work together? That was some of the more, the teams that had been together a little longer. They weren't asking about the skills of the people. They were asking about how they wanted to work, how they wanted feedback. What did they look like in conflict? And when the team starts asking that question, man, that makes our job as coaches a lot easier. So I want to talk about something here. I want to talk about no goldfish were harmed in the making of this slideshow. I just want to be very clear there. But this was actually, I had a picture of my son's goldfish bowl from 5 years ago, but I just thought that it was too sad to do. That goldfish is still fine to this day as well. But what we have here is, just a second ago, I was talking about the leaders making that environment and creating that stewardship. Now, what we were doing, because the product owners and the Scrum Masters were kind of, the oiling the machine and things were going, those managers, instead of feeling like something was being taken away, what we did was we put so much on their plate that they felt relieved when the product owners and Scrum Masters were handling those mechanics and the practices of the team. So I want to tell you the story and see if see if it resonates with you or you have anything similar. We had electronic change controls that had to be approved by 3 p.m. on Fridays. And it usually had 4 to 27 approvals, depending on who it touched. This was me at 2 o'clock every Friday, texting everyone on that approval list. Now, the thing about that was, if it got any closer, I would call them and I would say, hey, can I verbal you? And what that meant is there was just a little tick box that I could check that said I spoke with them verbally and they're giving a verbal approval. Every time they were like, well, are you okay with it? Yes, I've already approved it. Okay, I don't care as long as you're okay with it. But the interesting thing was that process was still in place, even after we were starting to change. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to see if anybody actually looked at it. And no one did. Everyone just asked the people doing closest to the work if they were okay with it. So I was really good. I was really good at getting those approvals in the last 2 hours of the day. But quite honestly, I was treating the fish instead of the water. Why was I getting really good at something that didn't matter? It didn't matter how much I could hunt someone down for an approval on a Friday afternoon. What mattered was, why are we getting those approvals? What is it in the system that's saying that we have to have those approvals just because? And so what was beautiful about this leadership team was they were looking at the environment. They were creating an environment where people could question a change control process, where people could question the way things were done. We worked in the business, but we also worked on the business. And we were relentless about the improvement of working on the business as much as what our products were being done. We were always questioning, we were always challenging, because we wanted to reduce waste, not just physical waste, but man, how many hours of my life am I never going to get back because I was chasing down all of those ECCs on those weekends, and it didn't matter in the long run. So it's amazing when we're able to kind of reduce waste in our product physically, but also in the way we produce things, because it gives us so much energy to go somewhere else. This is also, that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to go and say, why are we doing this? Because we're getting, well, we've always done this. Well, there's regulations, all of this. It's not easy to go and question those things that have always been done. But do it and fix those big nuggets and those big boulders. And the environment will absolutely open up so the teams get a little more awesome as well, because the teams will only get as large as the environment allows them to. So we want to create space in that environment so that the teams are able to be there as well. So I think then, oh dear. All right. So there's a story behind this, I promise. So this is me in college. I went to Texas Tech University. I was obviously a football fan, and it's in my blood. My name is Dallas. I'm from Texas. Like, I can't get much more gridiron American than that. But then we moved to New Zealand. And this is my son right here in the orange boots. Now, here's the thing. The first game that I saw with my son was him playing. It was the first rugby game I ever saw. And I was walking up and down the field, getting real grumpy. I'm like, why are they throwing the ball backwards? Why do they call it a try when they've succeeded? What's this lineup thing? I don't know. It's like I was very grumpy. And my husband taught me something that day, and it reminded me of what we did at Whole Foods. What he did was he stood beside me and he was calling out plays. He was like, this is why there's a penalty. This is why, this is the rule. This is how many points. And he was patient and he stood next to me and he coached me to understand the rules, because it wasn't fun when I didn't know the rules. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes we don't expect anything different from the managers as well. How many times do we go into organizations and say, okay, managers, you're agile. leaders, you're agile. Go forth and be great, you know? But the interesting thing is we don't sit there and tell them the rules of the new game that they're playing. We don't tell them the boundaries. We don't tell them what's off limits. We're not sitting there telling them about these things. And it's kind of the same thing. I want to root for my kids' rugby team, and those managers want to root for the teams, but they have to know the rules in order to do that. And I think back to our time at Whole Foods, and I remember we invested so much blood, sweat, and tears into education. I will show you this. This is literally a copy of the very first page of my first training that I did at Whole Foods. And this was stapled together, and it was put together with duct tape and chicken wire. And it was for the stakeholders. But why we did that was because, man, how are we expecting them to play by our rules, play our new game, if they don't know the rules? So it was me and the other Scrum Masters, the other Agile coaches doing this training for stakeholders, for executives, for leaders, for all those people, HR, legal, for all those people that we need in order to create a product, we need in order to be supportive of our team. We were starting to train them. Now, the training progressively got better, don't worry. It wasn't always this, but we took that time, because if it's important enough for us to educate our developers, our Scrum Masters, our coaches, our product owners, I would invite you to consider that it's just as important to teach the rules to the spectators as well, so that they're sitting there rooting for you. And that was one of the biggest things at Whole Foods. Education was incredibly important. It was a learning organization. And then one morning, I woke up to this. And here's the thing. It was a really big plot twist. And there was complexity there, let me tell you. Whole Foods is a culture of transparency and doing good and conscious capitalism and all of that. And Amazon is known for having other priorities. And so we were really worried. We were really worried about, are we going to lose this good thing? Are we going to lose all of these good things that we have? Now, how we did this was not something that you would think would be typical with Amazon, but because Whole Foods had been a publicly traded company and some stuff, we had to actually do a bit under the cover. And so we were planning on actually announcing in 6 months. We were going through all of the financial systems, mergers, the financial calendars, legal, etc. But the interesting thing is we did this with Post-its and painter's tape. And it was almost a $14 billion acquisition. It was the largest acquisition to date for Amazon. But there were less quality issues. There was less waste, and it was actually faster than any other one, even though it was one of the biggest. And the reason that happened is we put together a cross-functional self-organizing team to handle it. I was a Scrum Master. We came in, we met, we prioritized. We had a stand-up with the Seattle office of Amazon every day, and we took it bit by bit. And the beautiful thing was that this team that had seen all of this amazing stuff happen within Amazon or within Whole Foods were passionate. And so this little grocery store company is influencing this behemoth of an organization. And they still use a lot of the things that we did during that acquisition now to this day with any acquisition that they do at Amazon. And the thing is, we still kept that innovation as well. We still kept that experimentation. And what you see here is one of the last projects. I was working on, and it was Palm. Like you can now pay with your Palm at Whole Foods Market. That's impressive. That's crazy. 20 years ago, if you would have asked me that we did that, I absolutely would have said no. I absolutely would have even 5 years ago. It's still crazy to me. I did it the last time I was back home, and it creeped me out a little bit. My son started talking about Big Brother, but that's beside the point. They're still pushing the boundaries of how we go. And so whenever you're talking about the way we buy groceries, I want to name a few things and see if you've been affected by this. Whole Foods back in the early 90s started concierge service, which was the basis for grocery delivery. Amazon, when they acquired Whole Foods, was one of the first to do 2-hour delivery. 3, ordering online to pick up in the store started back in the early 2000s with Whole Foods. It was typed in a list. Let me be very clear. It was typed in a list and emailed, very low tech. And then they would email with the license plate, and they would meet them outside. But all of these conveniences that we have has started here. So with an organization like Whole Foods Market that has really pushed the boundaries, whenever you see cage-free, whenever you see free range, whenever you see anything about animal welfare, that was also Whole Foods starting that in the early 80s to press to know what we were putting into our bodies. So these things that affect us every day, and sometimes we take for granted, started because of this organization that had embraced agility even before they knew it was a thing, and innovated to make the way that we buy groceries as close to what we need and as close to streamline as possible. So, and they're still doing really cool things. So if you're ever in the States or the UK or Canada, I highly suggest you go in there and see. So with that, I know I'm probably a bit early, but do you guys have any questions or comments or concerns about anything that we talked about?
I have a question, if that's all right. I forget what the title was called, but it was about the teams choosing their teams stuff.
Yeah.
I was just curious how ownership of the work, accountability, and prioritize it, and managing, I guess, different priorities of work, how that was sorted out within the teams. Was it still top down from that perspective, or how did that aspect of it work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was a little bit of both. So there's a little top down, and being a publicly traded company, having legal ramifications, making sure that we have FDA approval, things like that. There were some things that are absolutely necessary. What we did kind of during the first part of this journey was we actually stopped the way we did prioritization. So what would happen earlier is the BAs would actually take a list, take every request and keep it. And we all know that as soon as you take an email, as soon as you say okay on a phone call, that is an implicit promise to the other person on the side, or the person on the other end of the phone. So what we did was we got all of the requests, because we were in a meeting. I remember this super clear. We were arguing between 167 and 166, like which priority. And I'm sitting there looking around. I'm like, we are literally crazy for doing this. But the thing is, we also wanted to break that implicit kind of contract. So what we did, we got all the information, we printed it out, we had an electric copy too, but we physically handed the list back to our stakeholders and said, you are the stakeholder. Here's the thing, we can take 6 things from you. That's our velocity. With the 12 teams that we support, this area can take 6 from each. And that's about a month's work for the 4 teams. So you decide what 6 you want, and we'll take them, but we are no longer holding your list. right? We kind of Marie Kondoed. We held the list, it didn't bring us joy, so we thanked it for its service and gave it back to the stakeholders. And as silly as that seems, but that gesture, kind of that ceremony, was holding a boundary that we really had to hold in order to be able to work on that other stuff. It's like this is what we can do. You keep everything. And what we didn't anticipate was just the sheer free up of time, space, and energy when we're not having to go through that crazy thing. So that was one of the ways. We had really good product owners and product managers that were doing that. Now with the work, it depended on the team, but some of the common working agreements were, for the first 3 sprints, the newbie doesn't work on a story alone. They partnered with everyone. So they were the main person, and the SME or whatever would back them up, so that there would be some knowledge transfer. And there would also be getting to know how they worked. So really most of the teams were self-organizing in the fact that they were responsible and accountable for how they got the product over the finish line, however that might be. And a lot of, we had some raised voices quite often because that accountability got a little heated sometimes, but there was a lot of ownership on that team because the team also owned the outcome. The team was the team that was presenting it to the business partners. It was never management. It was never leaders. It was the team handing the business something that they needed, or watching customers do it for the first time. It was a really cool experience to make sure that connection to the team and the work was always present and always very clear.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a crazy concept, but that's agile, right? It's trying new things. And it's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question if no one else wants to jump in. Tell us, what do you think it was about the culture of Whole Foods that that allowed these things to happen? I mean, there's awesome people in different parts of the organization for sure, but you just don't get to put a bar in the middle of a there is about 100 people who could have stopped that that thing happening along the way, and some of the other things you talked about as well. What do you believe was the I don't say secret sauce, maybe that's not it, but what was it about that environment at that time that allowed that to happen?
So John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, started Whole Foods literally in his backyard, which was kind of a commune. So like there's some history there that he really brought in the well-being of everyone. He brought in the benefit. He really thought about how everything was interconnected and how the people closest to the work knew the most about the work. And those were 2 things that he kind of brought in throughout the organization. And at one point we got really big and we got a little far away from that, which is about the time I joined. And he started to descale. So, we talk about scaling so much, but then he started to realize that this was his purpose. And he started to descale and talk about the connections being really important. HR at Whole Foods is called team member services. If you work there, you're called a team member. You're not called an employee. You are called a team member, and it doesn't matter what level you are. It was also kind of a democracy as well. So people voted on the benefits every year. And so it was really giving power to the employees. And the employees, when we did well, we felt good in the pocketbook, and we didn't do so well, we felt that in the pocketbook as well, because there is gain sharing as well at Whole Foods. So I think that was a really big part when you are directly compensated for how well or how not well an organization is doing. I think it adds some accountability as well, and it's a share, so everyone gets to share.
So I guess my follow-up question to that is that, you know, I had that startup mentality as a supermarket chain. How did that then hold up, or do you have a sense from maybe friends and colleagues who are or sorry, team members who are still there? What impact did that have? Did the culture hold up when the behemoth came in?
Yeah, not all of it. To be frank, to be fair, it's not the company that I spent my my formative years as developer. But I will say that I think Amazon gets a bad rap sometimes, and I get it. And I was able to kind of share into, like, be borrowed by Amazon, from Whole Foods into AWS before we all kind of became Amazon employees. And there's really awesome parts of that organization that are just so incredibly innovative and fast paced, and it was really cool. But that connectedness and that caring for the whole, I think was stronger during my time at Whole Foods than it is now, for sure.
Excellent. Thanks, Dallas.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions, Dallas? She can also solve any dredge or coaching woes as well.
Yeah, it was a really amazing experience, and this organization has 80,000 employees, and agility, when we were bought by Amazon, agility was in every part. The legal team was a Kanban team. HR had sprints. Procurement was Kanban. We had practices everywhere. Even store leadership, store managers were using Agile principles and Agile values and practices to run the physical store. So it was really pervasive. And I think it's just a reminder, particularly of us that started in tech. It's not just for tech, it's helpful everywhere. And it's that one little pebble at a time that really can make massive changes. And that's the only way to make those changes, is that one pebble at a time.
So what would be the first pebble?
Where are you? Just know where you, just notice where you are. If that's visualizing work, if that's noticing where waste is in the system, but it's noticing where we are and what exactly. Accepting our reality is another way to put it. Like, where are we? What are we doing? And what there is kind of wasteful.
And how do you communicate that message to people who are less receptive?
You drag them by the hair, and then you I think you speak. How are they going to be able to hear you? And I think that's sometimes different for everyone. So what is their worry? What is their breakdown? What is their breakdown that Agile presents as a solution to? Are they worried about their people being burnt out? Cool, we've got a solution for that. Are they worried about the quality of their work? We've got some practices you might want to try. Are you worried about actually just delivering something? And so I try to tailor it. If someone's less receptive, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why there's some fear or there's a blocker. So I approach with curiosity. What happened there? And then see if we can bridge their breakdown to the solution that we present.
Thank you.
It was like the questions might have run out. Has anyone got a last question? Something they want to fish it out? Very quiet group today. We can't shut them up.
This is kind of like off topic, but you had a picture of a Viking or someone in the middle. What was that about? And the training, like, is that like, it said, brace yourself, training is coming. And it said, make a meme on it as well. So I'm just curious. Oh, looks like she's frozen.
Looks like Dallas is frozen. She's that annoyed with the Viking remark that she.
I don't know. I was sorry.
Uh-oh.
Back with us, Dallas.
There's a chat. Hang on.
All right, unless she's back.
Hey,
You wasn't
Brian's
with your
am I
question,
back?
David.
I
You just-
apologize.
You're
I think
back.
I froze.
Yeah, you did. You froze again, but it looks at. There you go. Did you hear David's question? Can you hear us?
No, David M has replied to me. It's a meme from Game of Thrones. Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, Dallas was talking about the time that it was like the first slide in the meme was the first slide in the training pack. Like, prepare yourself for training or something, I think was what the meme said.
Oh, she's having issues.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right.
Well, we were kind of at the end there. She might come back and join us. There she comes again. Or not. You with us again, Dallas? We can't hear you if you can hear us.
Zoom is not playing nice.
Not sure. All right. So I will pass on. Right. Thanks to Dallas for joining us this evening. I'll pass on all your thanks while she sorts out her issues. A reminder is that if you've got a topic that you want to speak on, this is we need your assistance. This is our group. So if you have a topic that you would like to speak on, it doesn't have to take a full 30, 40 minutes, whatever, even if it's just a 10-minute topic, please reach out to either John or I. We would love to hear from you. Or if there's a topic you would like to hear something about, John and I sit around theorizing for hours sometimes about what people want to hear about. So please let us know about that as well. We'd love to hear from you because this is our community group, right? So it's a great place to meet other folks. So with that, we'll say thank you and good night. Thank you for joining us, and we do have something lined up for next month, which you'll see very soon. So exciting under wraps. I literally only read the email about an hour ago, so it's so off the fresh, but it'll be again the third Thursday of the month. And don't forget Lean Coffee as well. I'm not sure what the date is of that, but check the meetup site for Lean Coffee if you want to get together with people in person. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you real soon.